global happenings today. We communicate, we analyze global news. Stay tuned.
Hello fam, welcome back to our channel. Have you subscribed? Please, if you have not, please do so now by clicking on the red subscribe button below. Beside it, you see a bell notification icon. Please go ahead, click on it to get notified as soon as you update our channel on YouTube. Okay, it may come to us like a sad news, but then it's something we should reminisce on. It's likely that Nigeria as a country may have economically be recolonized. What do I mean? That Nigeria the federal government may likely be selling public assets just to fund 2020 budget. You know, the crunch in oil has greatly affected the budget that was made ahead of time. Borrowing and counter-borrowing seem not to be enough to buffer some sort of solution. But let's look at it critically, and let's see how we'll go through this. Let's look at it critically. Indications have emerged that more public assets may be put up for sale by the federal government as the Bureau of Public Enterprises reviews the 2020 privatization work plan. Checks by our correspondent reveal that work on the review of the privatization work plan is actually ongoing, and the revised 2020 budget has a deficit. Even though they have revised the 2020 budget, it is still on a deficit of 5.37 trillion naira. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has said the federal government intended to finance the deficit through domestic and foreign borrowing, as well as proceeds from privatization of public assets. Our correspondent learned that the BPE is reviewing the 2020 privatization work plan. The review of the work plan was informed by the drop in the project revenue that will accrue to the federal government within the year. The Director General of the BPE, Mr. Alex Oko, confirmed the ongoing review of the privatization work plan to our correspondent. Responding to inquiries by our correspondent, Okoye said, "We are currently reviewing the privatization work plan for 2020 to determine the transactions that are feasible within the fiscal year in view of the disruption caused by the COVID-19 health pandemic. We should be ready by the end of the next weekend." That's by next weekend. Although Okoye did not disclose whether the review will require putting more public assets up for sale, that the need to also source for funds for the 5.37 trillion deficit in the 2020 budget may compel the federal government to seek more revenue from additional privatization transactions. Before the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic instigated the ongoing review of 2020 privatization work plan, the BPE had targeted the generation of 266.8 billion naira as revenue from the sale and commercialization of public assets during the year. The sum of 3.9 billion would be expended on the transactions, leaving a net value of 266.8 billion naira. The bulk of the projected 2020 transactions are in the energy sector, where the BPE targeted 268.3 billion naira. The transaction from which the BPE planned to generate the 266.8 billion naira includes carryovers from 2019 approved work plan, such as completion of sales of the selling of Yola Electricity Distribution Company, Afam Power Limited, Afam 3 Fast Power. The transaction also included the Nigerian Integrated Power Projects. Other transactions in the initial 2020 work plan include the sale of additional shares of Gerugo, the Ambrion Power, Tafawa Balewa Square, Bank of Agriculture, Dowell Slumberger Nigeria Limited, NMC Houses, Nigeria Commodity Exchange and River Basin Development Authorities, and Lagos International Trade Fair Complex. Bam. Okay, you've all heard what our federal government have said. Even before this COVID-19, they actually had the intention of privatizing. Nigeria, welcome home. We have heard it. When it comes to this kind of privatization, what it means is that technically people can come in and buy. What it generally means is that people can, buy companies, buy some of the sectors, like we mentioned, some of the sectors that the government is intending to sell before now. And privatize before now, or probably even sell, as the case may be. And we are actually, by next week, we'll know the full impact, how many other sectors will be going in for privatization and for sales. Now, it brings me, I'm thinking out of the box now. Let's be truthful to ourselves. Let's leave sentiment out of this. The way the leadership of this country are looting money is as if there's something they're looking ahead. Now, if they had, in 2019, had the intention of privatizing some of the sectors, and in 2020, they are looting as if the world is going to end today. Could it be that when they bring out those companies, those sectors for sale, they will also be the one to buy it off, so that they will now kill the common man with so much price? Then let's look at it critically. If before now, some of the things the government sells, when government is giving us services, they usually have that consideration, being the fact that it's a government organization, so they usually don't have profit making per se in mind. All they're thinking of is, okay, how to make the general citizen comfortable. By the time you privatize, it's not a non-governmental organization, and it's no longer government owned. So what it means that the owner who's buying those companies or those sectors, as the case may be, have profitability in mind. They have profit making in mind. So they are not a charity home. So when they come in, they will look at this. Take a survey. Look at if they are essential commodities. That means people can't do without them. So they go ahead. Any amount the government gives them, they'll pay. But by the time they pay, they will make profit. Who will bear the brunt? The common man. They may increase the services. The services may be effective, may be efficient, but the truth of the matter is the costs of buying such services will be very, very high. And if it's an essential commodity, you can't do without it. What that means is that if, for a typical example is, if for instance now, we are just giving an example, let's assume that they're going to sell NNPC, and a liter of fuel probably goes for 125 naira per liter. When it's privatized and someone comes to buy it, or a country or whatever comes to buy that NNPC, the person, after market survey, after doing all the checks and balances, has the right to decide to put the amount of fuel to maybe 400 naira per liter. Okay? There's nothing really government can do, because that's a private organization. If you want to buy the fuel, then you have to buy 1 liter for 400 naira. It's up to you. If you don't want the fuel, if you can't afford it, then that means you shouldn't come. There's no negotiation about it. And what that means is that the common man who could barely buy a liter of fuel for 125 naira per liter, now struggling to pay 400 naira per liter for essential commodity, you now begin to see that the hardship is ahead. They will push the hardship back to Nigerians to bear the brunt. Now, some of the places they are selling off are essentials. We don't even know which other ones. Some people are even envisaging that Nigerian Port Authority will be amongst them. We don't know yet. They've not released the list yet. Now, have you seen, when I hear that they want to privatize, they want to sell, they want to sell to balance and finance 2020 budget. There's 2021. Where you go to get the money to finance 2021 budget? If you're already selling out all the assets, have you now seen that even Chinese or any other country can actually position themselves to buy some of these assets? And in our own country, we begin to in our own country, we are subjects. We are now subject to some of these international bodies simply because of mismanagement from our leaders. Now we are so blessed. Now, one would have expected, technically speaking, let's look at it without being biased. Remove sentiment that you are from the north, or you are from the east, or you are from the west. Let's look at it the way it is. Now, if such things have happened in our economy, the price of fuel has been reduced. Economically, one would reason it out. How many? We have about 7 to 9 jets, private presidential jets hanging there. Sell them off. Use the monies to generate income. Maintaining those jets are much. Now, the presidential, whatever amount you have already budgeted for the presidency, this is time for sacrifice. No one predicted the pandemic. No one predicted the crunch for oil, even though one have been envisaging that one day there will be a drop in price of crude oil. If the likes of Saudi Arabia, who produces much more higher oil than Nigeria, can reduce their budget to 30%. Nigeria is just removing their budget to 0.5. They remove 0.5 out of their budget they have envisaged. 0.6, sorry. So that means they've not even done anything. You see this whole issue of renovation of the renovation of the Senate Assembly, NAS. Forfeit it. Don't renovate. That place is still okay. It's not leaking. Let's leave the issue of renovation. That 30 something point whatever billion naira they have budgeted for it, plow it back into the economy. The presidency, whatever it is you have budgeted for, is full stop. Please, we are in economic crisis right now. Reduce it by half. The senators, the salaries and allowances, reduce it by half. If possible, reduce it by 70%. This is time for sacrifice. Everybody must sacrifice something. We all have to sacrifice something to get indigenous. Now, all those 30% increasement of salaries that you give to all our federal parastatals, please, they should all understand. Return them back to their normal salaries. Let's see how we can look inward, begin to increase in agriculture. Let's begin to export more of agriculture. We have a lot of fertile ground, fertile lands, fertile soils. Begin to look inward, and let's see how we can generate forests from within and not go borrowing. And this whole money that the humanitarian minister is spending, about 600 and something million naira per day for feeding of children who are at home, who did not beg her for food, she should cease. Those monies should be plowed back into the economy. You just see that this is a deliberate ploy. To me, this is just, it doesn't make sense. How can you be wasting money when you're looking for money? You now want to sell and privatize some of the key things that essentials that Nigerians buy? But this is really my take on this. Let's meet in our conversation. What do you think about this whole thing that we may likely lose our economy to foreign borders? Let's interact in our conversation. Don't also forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more updates.